control farm. We see the exact same thing. We saw in 2016 how there was direct messaging, digital voter suppression targeted to Black men when it came to Hillary Clinton and this whole deal of super predators. And so are we seeing the same thing in 2020? Are we seeing direct messaging targeting Black men to suppress their votes?
Well, I think we absolutely are. And the truth is, it's not just coming from the Russians. It's coming from a lot of different sources. I don't want to be specifically partisan here, but it's important just to know a couple of things. In 2020, in this presidential election, this is the first election since 1992 that Republicans will not be under that federal decree, which kept them from engaging in certain tactics to suppress our vote. We're seeing, not just in terms of the digital activity, but in the legal activity, which you've talked a bit about. They're in various states across the country. You've got in Alabama, for example, the Secretary of State is talking about making sure that if you have a mail-in vote, that you have to get 2 signatures or a stamp from a notary public. So there are all of these barriers being put into place. And when you add the layer of digital engagement, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for misinformation to spread. And the burden on the individual voter is so high to go out and sort of and figure out the truth and the veracity of these statements. And that's why when you ask about organizations, it's important for organizations not just to go out and talk about the importance of the election, but in some cases to actually be fact checkers, to go in and be able to very forcefully and proactively start to pull away at a lot of this information and start to spread good actual information about what voters need to do to be enfranchised in this election.
I'll pull Mark and Derrick back in. Derrick, y'all have been, of course, with Color Change and others fighting with Facebook on the very issue of the kind of information that's being spread out there. Mark, I want to get your thoughts, same thing in terms of how civil rights groups have been fighting this, because we specifically, African Americans, have been targeted. The reality is this here. If our vote wasn't powerful, we would not be being targeted the way we are. Derrick?
We established, along with Color Change, ADL, Stop Hate for Profit Coalition, because Facebook refused to address their platform to be used to recruit white supremacist activists who actually would meet up on there and they would carry out harmful activities. We learned in this campaign that they would buy ads from Facebook. Facebook knew they would place the ad based on algorithms of people who are more likely to gravitate towards that type of activity. And whether it was an incident that was out in the Bay Area where some group called Boogaloo, they recruited individuals, they met, they planned, and they killed a federal officer. Or what took place in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where a 17-year-old was recruited and he took arms and went across and he killed 2 individuals. And so we began to organize the campaign. July was successful. Over 1,000 companies signed up to stop buying ads on the platform. But this is the interesting thing about Facebook. It is a sovereign nation within sovereign nations. There are no regulatory guardrails. The board cannot hold them accountable because Zuckerberg owns 60% of the shares. We've talked to them for 2 years and they've done nothing. They've even announced an oversight board that won't be in place to monitor the election in time enough to monitor the election. So we've now joined another set of individuals to create a real oversight board leading up to the elections, monitoring the activities with some computer engineers, because the power of that platform is immeasurable. We have no idea of the true damage and the lasting damage that platform has done. We've got the reports, the Senate Intelligence Committee, the House Intelligence Committee. They've shown a lot. Mark has talked about it. But at the end of the day, we won't know the true harm that platform is allowing to happen on this election, probably into January, or if for that matter, may not be into next year, if at all. We have a problem with these social media platforms, and they are targeting our community. They are targeting our young people. So when we say the refrain, Black men don't, Black men won't, they are social listening, and they are parroting that same message and targeting to some of the very people we need to energize.
Mark, again, this is something that's critical. We're now living in an even more digital world, and this digital voter suppression is real. Mark, you on mute.
You released a report in 2019, Roland, on the state of Black America, and documented with precision and with tremendous evidence, in partnership with the German Marshall Fund, the extent to which the Russian Federation manipulated social media and platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube to run a high-powered, highly sophisticated psychological warfare campaign targeted at Black people. I'll give you an example of some of the things they did, because I think people need to be aware. They put together a banner ad, and the banner ad was African Americans for Hillary Clinton. That banner ad said, "Are you tired of the lines? Now you can vote by text. Text to this number and cast your vote and avoid the lines." And they put that out to over 250,000 people. There's no vote by text. The point is that the inventiveness and the ingenious nature of voter suppression today is not only voter ID, not only moving the polling place, not only purging voters, it's this psychological warfare campaign. Now, it's being aided and abetted by 45. So what 45 is doing is saying, don't trust mail-in ballots. Don't trust the post office. The impact, the intent of it is to get people, like people in our community, fearful of voting by mail, and also fearful of going to the poll because of COVID, and therefore suppress the vote. So the elements of voter suppression today are widespread for anyone who's in like an ostrich with their head in the sand, who says, my vote doesn't count. Why would there be an effort from as far away as Moscow all the way to Washington, to the highest councils in this country, to suppress African-American voters if your vote did not count? When we can't just say I'm woke. We got to be woke. We have to understand what people are doing. We have to understand the enemy, the adversary, those that want to suppress our influence, suppress our vote. And we've got to fight back, not give up, not give in. We have to fight back with every single thing we have. With this new Supreme Court appointment, affirmative action is on the line. Whether the Affordable Care Act will withstand another judicial challenge is on the line. Things that impact your pocketbook and your life are on the line. This ain't about trying to suggest that this is a vote for me and I'll set you free. This is not vote for somebody and they're gonna wipe all problems away. This is about leverage and looking at choices and saying who's best aligned, not who's perfectly aligned, not who excites me, not who has the most charisma. It's about who's best aligned with my interests and my values and our community's needs right now. When Barack Obama left office, the Black unemployment rate was at 5%. Now,
hold on, actually, you say when Obama left office? Hold on, Mark. Hold on, Mark. Mark, you said when Obama left office? When Obama left office, the black unemployment rate was 7.5. It was 7.5 for from a
But
high of 16.
still, it's twice as high today.
Right. No, but see, I've had to fact check even Trump with this. It went from a high of 16.9 in 2010 under Obama down to 7.5, a drop of 12 points. It goes down to about 5.1, 5.2 with Trump in November 2019, started to increase in December, January, February, explodes in March. Today is 13%. So when Trump is touting this, or Republicans tout it, I say, guys, facts are facts. You came in at 7.5, it's now at 13. You can't say you did a great job.
You cannot say you did a great job. And number two, Roland, you cannot say that you did anything specifically enumerated to bring the unemployment rate down, not only in Black America, but on an overall basis. So as I look at this right now, we have to focus. And what I want people to focus on is two things. Let's make sure we are counted in the census. We got this injunction against the Census Bureau this week. Hopefully it will stand and it will survive an appeal. That means we can be counted all the way to the end of October. What is this about? This is about reapportionment next year. This is about reapportionment of congressional, legislative, and councilmanic seats after the election takes place. That's why we have to get the correct numbers in the census. Number two, we have to make sure that we are energized and we're going to vote no matter what the circumstances are in this upcoming election. And so we got to focus on two things. And number three, beware of the noise. Beware of the phony arguments. Beware. Now, all of a sudden, I see yesterday, Trump put out a $500 billion plan. Not worth the paper it's written on.
Yeah, actually,
Where was the plan 4 years ago?
Actually, I went through the entire plan, and it's actually not even a $500 billion plan. It's not even close to that. So, I mean, we broke it down on the.
Not only that,
right.
Where was the Black provision you proposed in your COVID plan? I mean, we have got, to not be tricked. And I served in elected office for 15 years, right? And spent most of my career in politics and in active running for office and running other people's campaigns. What I say to folks is our power to make a difference and the consequential nature of this election, has to stimulate us. When we turned out in 2012 in large numbers at 66%, it made a difference to the reelection of Obama. I look at my own two elections in New Orleans. There have been only 4 instances in New Orleans history in a municipal election where the Black vote.
Because basically, when we talk about the voter suppression, purging as being one of the issues. One of the things that I've done is every single day on the show, I tell people, check your registration. I've had 4 people, one in different parts of the country, say,
released a report saying there are 200,000 people in Georgia had been inappropriately taken off of those rolls back in 2016, even here in New York. So it's not just about red states and southern states. It happens all over the country. In New York in 2016, just before the presidential primary, 200,000 people were kicked off the rolls. And a lot of people, as you said, didn't know that they were actually kicked off until they went to the poll that day to vote. And of course, with many of these states, you don't have same-day registration, so they have no recourse at that point. And so it is an extraordinarily pernicious problem in our community that we have to stay vigilant about. We have to work with our boards of elections to fight this and to set real guidelines for this. But unfortunately, because we don't have a national standard of elections, those things are decided state to state. It's really hard for individuals to sort of keep up on the rules and be able to deal with this nationally unless you have a real grassroots campaign and a state-by-state campaign that allows you to do that. But it is one of the most pernicious ways that we see a lot of people get pushed off of the voter rolls.
Which is why, Derrick, what we have to do is use every messaging platform to drive that, because, again, there are a lot of people who just figure, look, I registered. Again, I had a guy who voted in the Arizona primary which is only a few months ago, went back and realized he had been purged. And so it's driving that. And to me, it has to be a constant deal how we're driving that. Look, if we got people who are targeting us on the digital, we've got to utilize the collective influence of all these different platforms saying, and I've been saying the same thing, forget the polls, go to vote.org, check your registration. If you're not registered, register. Then after you register, make a decision. Are you going to mail in ballot? Request a mail in ballot. If you're going to vote, vote early. Don't wait for November 3rd and all the long lines. Actually create a plan, and we got to just hammer it every single day.
Absolutely. You know, we have to map out where do we have election administrators who are friendly and do an assessment of what's needed to ensure access to the vote is allowed for our community. And then where do we have election administrators who are adverse, who are seeking ways to purge the books, who are seeking ways to put up barriers and make sure we allocate resources there.
The other one.
And then,
Okay.
And then we have the realization that these social media platforms are so powerful, there is no effective way to boycott them because they are too large now. There are no ways for us to see exactly what they're saying because they're very micro-targeted in their messaging to certain communities. So then we have to figure out how do we use these tools to our benefit to not only counter misinformation, but also promote accurate information. They know that voting has started in these 5 areas, and these are the mechanisms in which you can vote. And here are the abilities for you to cast an absentee ballot safely.
Talking about too is the fact that our election system really doesn't have the infrastructure to accommodate what we need in this election cycle. It just wasn't built for that. And that's a really important point that I think folks, I know we're talking about on this call, but as you go out, beyond this and talk to people about making a plan to vote, it's because our infrastructure just can't accommodate this. If you think about the fact that only about 6 or 7 states have a robust mail-in voting program. Everybody else does some version of an absentee ballot plan. Here in New York, I applied for my absentee ballot to vote in the June primary. I still haven't gotten my ballot. And so I had to make sure that I had a plan to go out and cast my vote, realizing that I probably wouldn't get it in the mail-in time. And so what we're seeing is with all of the folks that are being, we're encouraging people to make a plan to if you can't go in person, to make sure you actually have a mail-in ballot. There are real concerns about whether or not you can still, how you get that ballot to a place where it'll be counted and how long it's actually going to take for it to get counted. So even on election day, that normal sort of, sitting by the television wondering who won, we won't find out the winner of this election probably for several weeks afterwards. So, and in that time, a lot can happen to discount the ballots that you've mailed in. In that time, a lot can happen to suggest that, well, you didn't have a stamp or you didn't have it postmarked by a certain date, so therefore we're not counting your ballot. In fact, NPR reported that in the presidential primaries, over 500,000 ballots were discarded because they didn't meet certain guidelines. That's over 500,000 people who were disenfranchised just in the presidential primaries alone. So in thinking about who are sort of the more receptive folks within these boards of elections, and you've also heard the president go after the U.S. Postal Service, right? Again, another form of suppression. If we're thinking about folks who are like-minded, who are sensitive and sympathetic to sort of what we're going to be experiencing in these boards of elections across the country and in state parties across the country, it's really important that we work with them to make sure that these votes are counted, because they're going to be constrained by the infrastructure we have, because of course we just haven't been funding our infrastructure well enough. It's been just good enough, but not great enough.
Let me put a quick point on that. The average voting machine is over 15 years old.
Right.
Purchased with Help America Vote Act money, with technology that is now dated. None of us are operating, I won't say none of us, few of us are operating with computers that's more than 15 years old. In fact, I venture to say no one on this call is operating with a 15-year-old computer because the technology is too far advanced. But the average age of the voting machine is that's what we're looking at. And so to say that the system is not set up for it, that's an understatement. But we still must overwhelm the system with the number of people to turn out to offset for the number of votes they're going to try to steal or suppress.
You know, I want to make a point on that. You know, we are the only Western democracy that doesn't have a central or national, if you will, voting system. Effectively, what we have is a county-based system in the United States, where there's a county elections official. They're part of a state network, but it's really controlled at the county level. So it's subject to the whims of finances, fiscal constraints, decisions made by county councils and city councils as to what can be afforded. And I think this is something that needs to be looked at in a significant way. There should be national standards. There should be some minimum standards. We got this with the motor voter law back in 1993. Many of you all remember when, particularly in the South, in order to register to vote, you had to go to the courthouse or go to the city hall, and that was it. Couldn't register by mail. You couldn't have a mobile registration site except with literally an act of God. So this issue of reforming, so we need to do this. We need to pass a new Voting Rights Advancement Act. We need to work on the elimination of the Electoral College. We need to give DC congressional representation through statehood. There are a number of things related to what I call the power dynamic that need to be undertaken in early 2021. These things should not be backburnered. They should not be subject to long, difficult, arduous hearings. There should be strong legislation. There's consensus amongst the American people on everything I just shared.
One of the issues, obviously, health is a part of the agenda in this election. We simply cannot ignore that reality. I want to bring in Dr. Ron Coleman into this conversation because we see the Supreme Court is going to be taking up the Affordable Care Act in November. One of the reasons why Republicans want to rush this nominee onto the court, they believe they have the votes to strike down the Affordable Care Act. That is significant because it impacts Black health as well.
Correct, sir. And I was charged with Black health for Black men, and that's such a broad topic. Initially, when researching this call, I was like, okay, well, I get 15 minutes. I have to fill up 15 minutes. After reaching out to some of my colleagues and thinking about the depth of this call, I'm like, oh my God, I only have 15 minutes because this is such a tremendous topic. Now, the health in and of itself as it relates to voting, I think that if you protect yourself, if you cannot secure the absentee ballot and you protect yourselves appropriately, that should not be a deterrent. Now, what will come into play, though, especially as men and men folk, as we're known, the other responsibilities will squeeze, I think, the voting apparatus, our voting abilities, because we have these other responsibilities of work, of family, of taking care of ourselves. And whereas if I had the entire day, I can socially distance and protect myself from COVID, to be specific. We may not have that unless we make sure that we commit and devote the time necessary for that.
But when we talk about this again, when we talk about the issues of prostate cancer, we talk about, I mean, look, we just lost Chadwick Boseman to colon cancer at the age of 43. When we talk about health overall, we have to understand public policy and politicians are tied directly to health outcomes because that impacts research, that impacts dollars, that impacts all of those things.
That's 100% correct. Now, this is a little bit beyond what I was planning on talking about, but it's an excellent point.
Well, here's the deal. You understand, I'm always changed. So whatever they told you before, ignore that. Just focus on what we're talking about right now. Go ahead.
Exactly. All the research out the hell. All right, hold on. All right. So if you think about what you're talking about, it's an absolutely excellent point because when I was in medical school, we talked about, okay, well, these medicines are what we use. We use hypertension for one because that affects us disproportionately. We'll use hypertension because it's Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. I'm an advocate against colon cancer, but the thing that's most likely to take you off of this earth is your heart and your cardiovascular system. the medicines that we learned about in medical school don't necessarily work on black people the same way they work on white people. And it's multifaceted. But if you look at the research, even the normals when it comes to blood pressure, sodium, potassium, all of those issues are based on healthy white men. All the studies were done based on healthy white men. Now, that is multifactorial as well, because we were not recruited to participate in the studies unless it was something deleterious, unless we wanted to see if there was a bad effect of a medicine or syphilis, for example. We were recruited for those type of studies, but the studies to help people were not necessarily intended to involve black people. Well, fast forward 200 years, now they want to involve us, and our systemic distrust of the system will not allow us to participate in studies at the level representative of us that we are in society. So that type of issue certainly has a lot to do with why this blood pressure medicine may not work as well on me, and why when I go to my Caucasian physician, he may not understand that because he was not educated that there was a real and genetic difference. Now, these things are changing. I graduated medical school in '92. I went to Meharry. We were taught, this is what the book says, this is the answer to the test, this is what you do with your black patients.
The thing, again, I think when we talk about where we are now with elections, we talk about even on the federal, state, and the local level as well. You have to tie health into this because the reality is, you look at what has happened in the city level and the county level, massive cuts in mental illness. When people talk about defund the police, health is a part of that. In San Francisco, when they after the murder of George Floyd, they actually changed it where they sent out mental health professionals to calls before they sent the police out, because a lot of these cases that we've seen, such as the case in Rochester, New York, where a black man with a mental disorder was suffocated to death. Again, that was a mental illness. That's a mental issue. And so when you talk about health, we also have to include mental health in this discussion.
Now, I don't know if you saw the paperwork that I just threw over my shoulder, but that's one of the main points that I had on there. 1 in 5 African Americans suffers from some type of mental health, all right? 1 in 5. Of all, and mental health as a society, we don't respect it as we should. This is white, black, everybody. Of the people that do respect it, only 6% of African Americans take advantage of, let me scratch that, not even 6% as a whole. The people who take advantage of mental services, which is they're underutilized, they're underavailable to our society, our community, but they're underutilized. Only 6% of those people who take advantage of it are African American, where 1 in 5 African Americans have some degree of mental illness. So especially in these stressful times, the stress of COVID, the financial stresses that came with it, the stress that 45 puts on you on a daily basis, if you pay any attention to what he says, that can unearth things that we kind of had in check. And if we don't avail ourselves, I'm a specialist in gastroenterology. You cannot fix your own gut. You need somebody like me. Most people think they can fix their own brains. Most of us need to understand our limitations and capabilities when it comes to healthcare, because we cannot handle everything just because we're a big black man. It doesn't work like that.
Going to go to questions now. We got time for questions. And so, Harry, tell us, how is this going to be handled? Questions from folks. How's it being handled?
I think we're going to have people raise their hands, ask some questions. I know Mark is on the time limit, so he may have to leave early during questions. But right now, we want to open it up, and I'm asking our everyone to raise your hand by your computer. So if you raise your hand by your computer, we will recognize you, and then you can get a question answered to either one of our panelists. They all are good, great, talking about things that are coming up. So raise your hands on your computer. Let's answer the questions, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, let me say thank you, because I do have to excuse myself for another panel. Thank you, Harry, and thank you, Roland, and thank you, Derrick, and all the other panelists. Good to be with you today.
Thank you, Mark.
So, Harry, who is calling on the folks raising their hand? I can't see that. So
let me see. I'm trying to look at my computer now to see on the chat. So,
yeah,
operator who is operating everything, would you please direct the questions to me or tell us what the questions are? In the meantime, let me ask a question to Ron Coleman.
All right.
Ron, tell us
This
about
one should be
doing
short,
health.
huh?
One second. Go ahead and drop Mark there. Harry, go ahead. You were asking Ron about COVID.
Yeah, I was asking Ron about what we should be doing as men right now with the whole deal with colon cancer, as you mentioned about our great superstar that just passed away. What should men be doing right now to come see a doctor like you or somebody else to make sure we're still living?
Thank you so much for that question. It's an appropriate question. What I would say is the main thing is get somebody like me in your life. For African Americans, 45 is the age you should be screened for colon cancer. If you have colon cancer in your family or colon polyps in your family, it should even be earlier. 50 is what the majority will tell you. That is incorrect for African American. It's 45 years old. If you are 45 and you have a colon, those are the only two requirements to have a colonoscopy, and colon cancer is preventable. We spoke briefly about prostate cancer. We want to find prostate cancer early. There are women on the call. We do mammograms to find breast cancer early. Colon cancer is one of the only cancers you can actually prevent. I can keep you from ever getting it, which is a whole lot better than trying to fix it after you already have it.
Wonderful. I'm still waiting on the questions to come in, Roland. Let's ask Basil another question. What do we need to do to help with stop the voter suppression going on in these states? Give us 1 or 2 points that can happen right now that we as a group of men ought to be doing in our neighborhoods and in our cities. You're muted.
Okay. Well,
You just muted again.
Yourself, brother.
all right. How's that?
Great.
Beautiful. So, a couple of things that are that I know that are being discussed. Number one, I would love for, and the campaigns specifically do this, but I think we can just do it as Black men and women, create legal entities, groups of lawyers that are tasked with leading up to and including election day to be poll watchers, to be able to assist voters as they walk in and out of the polling site, or even just be on hand when voters have questions, that there's a sort of an 800 number or a number that they can call to get information about what they can and cannot do. Again, the campaigns do this, the individual state parties do this, but there's nothing keeping us from doing it just as a community. And then just, even if you're not a lawyer, volunteer to be a poll watcher, to be in the actual polling site, watching people go and vote, which is also interesting because that does touch to voter intimidation, because folks from the other side can do the same thing. So we have to be mindful that even though they're watching, to make sure that you're able to cast your vote in a safe and honest.
Yes, please go ahead, Walter.
Yeah, my question was 2 parts, and I wish that I was able to ask it to Mark. But the first question I had was this stuff about what's happening with Black men and how they're trying to suppress our vote. Basically, I've seen too many Black men that I've seen around the country who they don't vote, period. Okay, so this effort of fooling us as far as voting by a certain way, are we actually falling for all that? And do you have evidence of that? Second thing is I'm also concerned about this issue about the Electoral College, okay, where the Electoral College is there for a reason and has been there for a reason, as far as giving every state an equal voice in an election, okay? So that I'm living in Connecticut, for example, so that if I'm living in Connecticut, I have a reasonably equal voice than, say, New York or California. Okay?
No, that's not true. No, that's not true. That's not true. So let me deal with the first one. The reality is we see, based upon the information, first of all, false information, disinformation, lies spread much faster than truth. And that's why people have been so critical of Facebook, the way information is being spread across social media. And they understand how messaging is targeted to different people. I've had individuals, whether they're Black or white or whatever, say things to me on social media, flat out lies. Well, I saw it here, but I'm like, but they were lying to you as well. And so this is where the fight against that kind of information is real. Are we falling for it? Yeah, we are just as susceptible to somebody else. There are individuals out there who are not watching MSNBC or CNN or Fox News or ABC, NBC, CBS. They're getting their information from these sources. And when people say, but I saw it on the internet, well, hell, it's a lot of stuff that's a lie on the internet. And so that's why trustful sources is critically important. Now to the second point. The Electoral College is based upon is your congressional delegation in terms of your Electoral College votes. So Connecticut doesn't have the same vote as Texas or California, okay? You don't have that, all right? The way the system is set up is in nearly every state, whoever wins the popular vote in that state gets that state's Electoral College votes. Now, the Supreme Court, you have these people, conscientious objectors or electors. Could they vote for whoever they wanted to vote for? Consider that breaking up their Electoral College vote based upon the congressional district as opposed to winner take all. And so the reason people say it's unfair in terms of Electoral College vote is because you have smaller states say, oh, they will be ignored. They won't campaign to us. They only go to the big cities. Well, the reason that's nonsensical because here's the deal. Ain't nobody campaigning in Wyoming right now. Nobody's campaigning in Idaho. No one is going to North Dakota and South Dakota to actually campaign. So the votes do matter.
Okay,
but if I could just piggyback on that.
Roland, you didn't answer my question. Okay, my question is, why are we concerned about the Electoral College and the Electoral when all they're doing in the Electoral College is nobody's campaigning in Wyoming because there's only about 3 electoral votes. I don't know how many people are doing it in Connecticut because Connecticut only has 8. Okay.
Yes, but let's be clear.
California.
But let's be clear. Connecticut's no. Let's be clear. Your Connecticut Electoral College do vote because. Let's just go back, let's do simple math. Go back to 2000. Had Al Gore won his home state, Al Gore would have been president. Your 8, let me tell you something, if you have if Joe Biden is sitting on 263 Electoral College votes and he wins Connecticut, he's president because that's 271. Because you need 270. So this notion that my 8 doesn't matter because California has more. No, your 8 is based upon your congressional delegation. Your 8 do matter. Your 8 matters because your 8 gets a candidate to 270.
Okay,
so they all matter.
Again, Roland, again, you're not answering my question. Yes, I'm aware of that. What I'm saying is that if my state matters, but we only have 8 based on our population. Okay, if most of Hillary Clinton's Electoral College votes came from the big states like New York and California. Okay, now.
So what's your question? Okay, so what's your question?
Okay, my question is, why are we opposing or yelling about an Electoral College? Because all the Electoral College does is it gives you Electoral College votes in proportion to your population in your state.
And the reason people are opposing the Electoral College is because of what happened in 2016, where the candidate that got 3 million more votes did not win the presidency.
Yes, that's I'm why. Aware of that. And
so that's you asked why.
Roland,
that's why.
Roland. The reason why that happened is because of the Electoral College. The Electoral College gives those smaller states an equal amount of voice in the election as a big state. If all you can do is depend on the big states with the large populations, then the only reason to vote is if you're living in a big state. If you're living in a small state, you don't have to. I mean,
You're wrong.
Can I interject because I was a member of the
Because the big
Electoral
states have
College?
the
Can I
voice.
interject that real quick?
Let us hear from Basil right quick.
Yeah. So in 2016, I actually was a member of the Electoral College. So and I thought it was an incredible honor, but I agree that we should actually get rid of it. But I think to the question, and I think what's important to understand is that even for whatever states have power in that particular election, that power given through the Electoral College can actually change because it's also tied to the census, which goes back to our point about why that's really important. So if you think about it, in 1950, New York had 45 members of Congress, right? So +2 is the Electoral College vote. Consider now that New York has 27. We lost 2 members of Congress between 2010 and now. With this census, we're poised to lose 2 more. So where are those voters going? That population going? A lot of the folks that are leaving New York are going to Florida, and a lot are going to Texas. So what that means is that New York is losing power, not just in Congress, but in their electoral votes. And we're giving it to Florida, which makes Florida that much more important as we continue, as we go beyond 2020. You see, so I agree that we should abolish it. But what's I think important to note is that as long as we have it, and as long as the Electoral College is tied to the census, it does change a lot of the power dynamics from state to state as folks are running for national office.
I think somebody had their hand raised to ask a question. I know there was a question from J.D. Staten, so let me get that question out to everybody, to the panelists. He says, number one, would it be helpful if we took this platform to our Black neighborhoods to get the word out? So anybody want to handle that, Basil or Roland or Ron? Should we take this platform into our Black neighborhoods some kind of way?
Well, part of the problem that we're facing right now is that we're living in a COVID world. And so typically what has happened around these elections, Democrats have been on the Biden campaign because of COVID. They've been reaching people via text messaging, via calls as well. And so this year is just completely different because it is completely upended how we have normally been able to reach people in the election. And so that's sort of where we stand right now. And then the question would be, is that a smart strategy? I know some community groups who have chosen on their own to do door knocking, but practicing social distancing, wearing masks and eye covering as well. But right now, the majority of how we're reaching people has to be on the digital level. What we're doing, okay, because I need people to understand, this is not just we're not just having a conversation amongst ourselves with the 200 people in this Zoom. We're actually live streaming this stuff on my social media platforms as well. I reach 3.2 million folks. So we're live streaming this on Facebook, on YouTube, on Periscope, and placing it on Instagram as well to be able to reach folks.
Great. Estelle had a question. Estelle, are you on? Can we unmute Estelle?
Here I am. I'm sorry. I have a question and
through on your absentee balloting and following all the different steps. And so part of the issue is that if you look at mass media, on election day, and they have it during early voting, but that's based upon your state. And so what you're describing is one particular state. South Carolina, for instance, doesn't have early voting. Texas, the governor extended early voting. It was supposed to start on October 19th, is now starting on October 13th. Republican governor, his own Republican Party is suing him, saying it shouldn't have been extended. You have the court ruling in South Carolina, where you have to have a witness sign when you have an absentee balloting. So part of the issue is you have to literally go through state by state by state to explain all of the different rules and procedures tied to absentee balloting. Do I even need an excuse to vote by absentee ballot? Some states, you can request your absentee ballot online. Other states, you got to request it by mail. And so what I constantly do on my show is say, I need you to check the rules in your state because it varies.
Yeah, I said one other thing. There are a lot, and I'm sure you already know this, there are a lot of resources out there. We can give out one number, and they have the information for all states.
Right, that's right. 2 websites, vote.org, iwillvote.com. That's where we've been driving people there to understand. First, check your status. Are you registered? You can go to vote.org, type it right in, and it'll tell you, yes, you're registered. If you're not registered, you can go ahead and register. If you want to actually request a mail ballot, you can do it right there. It'll take you, once you put in your name, address, and state, it'll take you to your state website in terms of how to go through that whole deal. And so I hit this every day on my show for people to understand. If you're in a particular state, I would suggest you share whatever site in your state that has that information. That way it's just your state and it's not all the other states as well.
Thank you, Estelle, for those questions. I think we're running short on time. Let's do this, Roland, if we can.
It's 3:50, so we got 10 minutes left, right?
How about 10 minutes, I think. Question to ask Basil, and if he has anything else he wants to add in terms of how do we make sure that we get out and get our folks voted? How do we do that?
Well, if you don't mind, one of the things that I want to do is just raise an issue that I do whenever I talk about campaigns and voting. It's sort of an issue that's near and dear to my heart, which is that I think one of the most effective ways to suppress our vote and is to diminish its importance in K-12 education. Right now, there are over 14,000 school districts in the country, which, to say that loosely, it's over 14,000 ways to educate young people. So there are so many different ways in curriculum, teachers and curriculum, so many different ways that we engage our kids. And in many of these districts, civics and civic education is either not taught at all, or it's not taught in conjunction with a curriculum that focuses on diversity and inclusion. So I follow what Dr. Bettina Love and others have said in terms of at a focus on abolitionist teaching, right? Abolitionist teaching and curriculum. And I think that's critically important because this president, if you remember, about a week ago, talked about the importance of patriotic education and getting rid of the 1619 project being taught in schools and other elements of the curriculum that talked about to layer a civics curriculum through.
Make the decision upon yourself that you're going to personally reach out to 10 people to inquire as to whether or not they're registered, 2, if they're going to vote. And why am I saying if? Because somebody may say no. You then need to be working on them to explain to them why they should vote, and then say, walk you through the process, and then challenge another 10. Look, we're not in a situation where we could throw a concert and 5,000 people show up and talk to 5,000 people. But the reality is here. There are 200 people who are sitting here right now. That's 2,000 people we can reach. If we then ask those 2,000 people on this call if you use that model, okay, fine, 200 ask 10. Now you at 2,000. Then you get 2,000 ask 10. Now you get 20,000. That's just very basic. That's a text message. That's a phone call. Basic this is, and that's where they have early voting. So what we should do is find out, does your state have early voting? When does it start? But we should be encouraging everybody, do not wait for November 3rd. If you can vote early, get it done early. If you're going to vote by mail, take your time and go through every single step. If you got to bubble it in, Lord, please don't bubble outside the circle, because I'm telling you, the Republican Party and Donald Trump, they are lining up lawyers. They're going to challenge as many mail-in ballots as possible. And real quick, y'all heard that story just 2 days yesterday. Where they said, oh, we found 9 ballots. They were for Trump in a ditch. They actually sued, and those ballots were thrown out. So they were complaining about ballots that they actually had tossed out that were discarded by a worker who was hired just 3 days earlier, who had no idea what the hell they were doing. So I just want people to understand they are targeting mail-in balloting. So take your time and follow every procedure in your state on how to fill out your mail-in ballot. And if you can drop it off in a mail drop box, that's great. Thank you to the A. Philip Randolph Institute for suing in Ohio. That allowed that to go to the federal courts, and they said you cannot limit one mail-in drop box per county. You could do more than that. So Cleola Brown, good job with that.
So Roland, Harry, I want to conclude. This is Derrick. I got to get ready to go. To conclude by thanking for the invitation, Dr. Cole, Dr. Thelma Daly for this opportunity to the program Roland just mentioned. If you log on and sign up, we can give you 10 people in your area who are infrequent voters, who voted in the last 8 years but didn't vote in 2016. And we give you them, their name, whatever information out of our relational organizing program. It's NAACP.org/volunteer. We launched that in October. I want to thank you all for the opportunity. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care.
Hold on. Derrick, you said NAACP.org/volunteer. And volunteer. What you can put in.
We sign up. Once you sign up, starting in October, we're going to give you 10 people in the target area where we need them to turn out. We've done the data analysis over the last few years, so we know exactly who the infrequent voters are. And that's for us, that's going to be absolutely key because we're targeting people in areas we need them to turn out to impact the outcome of the election.
Great. I think that's great news, Derrick. We appreciate that. And thank you. You spent some time here in Houston going to law school, so we appreciate you, Roland and I. Thank you so much. And there's one final question I see. How do we counteract Black men for Trump? They're coming out in large numbers. I think he had an event down in Atlanta, Roland, yesterday or something like that, talking about $1 million or something.
Well, look.
Talk to me about that.
No, I'll let Roland start it. I'll let him go.
It's called facts. It's called, look, here's the deal. Let's be real clear. If you choose to vote Republican for Trump, that's your business. If you want to vote Democrat for Biden, that's your business. What I do is I counter people with facts. I literally walked through this real quick. When Donald Trump keeps saying how he made permanent funding for HBCUs, that's a lie. It was funding for one program. The program was started by President George W. Bush. It was a 2-year program. Obama extended it to a 10-year program. It expired. Trump had nothing to do with that. Congressman Alma Adams was the one who sponsored the bill, pushed it through. The White House had no idea about it, so he's taking credit for something Congressman Alma Adams did, and it's one program, and it's $85 million. So it's a lie that, I've permanent funding for HBCUs. It's an absolute lie. Walter Kimbrough, president of Dillard University, has exposed that whole deal. In his platinum plan, he wants his own housing. Housing was at its highest, black home ownership was at its highest under Bill Clinton. It dropped to its lowest under Trump in 2019 at 40%. Where's been your housing plan since? You counter people with stuff with facts. That's what you do.
Don't forget what I said about the mental illness, okay? I don't know what those guys are doing, but 1 in 6, okay?
Well, Doc, we appreciate that because one of the deals I recall Michelle Obama said a couple of weeks ago, she was trying to figure out what was wrong with her. Waking up late, not doing things right. And she mentioned specifically, I'm depressed. I'm depressed because of what I'm hearing on the radio, on the TV. I'm depressed with what 45 is doing. Help us understand that, because when I said that to somebody, said, nobody's depressed. I said, well, there has to be something going on because
no. Yeah, she had low grade depression, and and Doc, we have seen people. First of all, look, I've had to deal with this with my nieces. Our total life has been upended by depression. I mean, I haven't seen my parents since November, Thanksgiving, and so for a lot of people, that's dragging them down.
So the bottom line is recognizing your triggers and counteracting them, and knowing when you need help. All right. If you see that you're out of sorts and you just can't put your finger on it, you don't necessarily hurt anywhere, but you feel bad. You know, each day is a struggle to get your day going. Recognizing, hey, this is not a physical illness. You can approach it with the same enthusiasm, if you will. If you had a burning in the pit of your stomach that was keeping you from eating and making you nauseated and making you throw up, you best believe you would go to the doctor. If you had a tickle in your throat, thought maybe you had COVID, you would go to the doctor. If you do not recognize the symptoms, and it could be as subtle as not wanting to do the things that generally give you joy. It can be that subtle. In these times, those things are amplified. You're left with a lot more time to yourself. You're out of your normal routine. You can't see the loved ones that offer you inspiration and sometimes distractions, nor can you participate in some of those activities that would give you the ability to burn off your endorphins. I would say, and this is for everybody here, get outside, get some sunshine, walk and think. That's a simple approach to get you kind of a feel, not just my cousin who thinks he knows everything, not just Dr. Google who's going to tell you have a brain tumor. You do not need, you need to find appropriate help when the help is necessary.
Great.
If I could just add for 10
ahead.
seconds, it's important also to recognize that children are dealing with a lot of trauma right now as well. They may not be able to articulate it to anyone, but if we are aware of seeing the signs, realizing that their inability to go to schools, if their parents are not able to send them to schools or the schools are not fully open, that might overcome issues of food insecurity that they may be dealing with. It may help them being with other students to.
The most likely cause of death of a Black male youth is Black male